Welcome once again to the Software Speaker Show, a show designed to help engineers become better communicators. Today, I have the pleasure of interviewing Steve Taranovich. Steve is former editor of EE Times and Planet Analog publications, and he is also the author of a book titled Guardians of the Right Stuff. It's a story about all of the engineers who were protecting and helping the astronauts during the Apollo space program. So, Steve, thank you very much for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me, Jaime. Appreciate it.
And so we're going to go through the basic round of questions I ask everybody. The first is, what made you want to be an engineer? Of all the things you could have done in life, what in the world possessed you to want to be an engineer?
Well, I started off as I wanted to be a cowboy or a policeman or an army man when I was, this is in my maybe 8 to 10 year old.
That.
But
cowboy.
But anyway, what happened is one Christmas, my mom bought me this Marx Cape Canaveral set. Had all these rockets. There was a little record that would play all the sounds and stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. And I hadn't thought of, never thought of anything like that, like about space or anything at that time. This is in the 50s. I was like maybe 7 or 8. Then she also bought me later on a single crystal radio kit, and I built a crystal radio. That was fun. I heard a radio station. I was like amazed, but still, I wasn't like really still headed for engineering. What really got me, I was about 11 years old, and the space program started with the Mercury astronauts and the Gemini that had 2 astronauts in, and then of course the Apollo program that went to the moon. So, and I was home when the first rocket launched with a Gemini, with a Mercury capsule on top of it. And what really struck me was when they flipped back to mission control, and I saw all the electronics and the communication gear and controls for everything, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I really want to be part of this. I was like 11, I said, I want to be part of this, and I knew it was electrical and electronics. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that stuff. And I want to work for NASA. Well, I never did get a chance to work for NASA, but now I've visited NASA, a bunch of NASA locations. I've got some really good friends at different locations at NASA, and it's a passion for me. I love it, So that's what got me started to become an engineer at that point. And my goal was, hey, I'm going to do whatever I can to be an engineer, and I want to go to a decent school. I'm 11 years old, and I'm thinking this. My parents couldn't afford anything, so I just worked my tail off as I got older in high school, and to save money to go to NYU, New York University Engineering School. So,
wow,
that's how I get into that.
And so after engineering school, you went. What was your first job? Do you remember?
Yeah, my first job was was with a company that was a construction company for electrical in and the first job I was on, I was out in the field in a trailer with a drafting board, and what we were doing is they were building a 12-story hospital up in the Bronx, New York. And I was working with the electrical engineer to figure out how many outlets go on to this breaker and all that kind of stuff. So that was a nice thing, and it lasted a few months and stuff. And then I started into audio for 8 years, and then microwave for the following 8 years as a design engineer, circuit design engineer.
Okay. Wow. So that's nice. You got to start somewhere, but you contributed to the hospital in the Bronx, so that's nice.
Yeah.
So like a lot of engineers, you get out of school, you met the goal, and you think to yourself, I made it. I've got my dream job. But you took it a step further now. you got into writing. How did that happen?
Well, it didn't happen right away. I mean, I was the typical, for the first 16 years at the audio and the microwave company, I was a techno geek, which I still am, but I was in my little corner designing some circuits and, for different equipment and stuff, both audio and then the microwave. And I was a typical engineer, I didn't write much. I wrote, the only thing I started writing was technical manuals for the stuff I designed, so that designers would know how to use the equipment and how to calibrate it, things like that. So that was the beginning. But for the first 16 years, I was in my little corner in the lab, doing my thing, and then what happened is after the microwave opportunity, the microwave job that I had, there was an opportunity to go to a company called, well, there were two things. There were what's important in my life and for the young engineers to the guys and gals out there to understand is that you're going to come to many forks in the road. Okay. Usually it's a two-pronged fork. It could be multiple pronged, but in my life, I've had multiple forks in the road. The fork in the road I came to at that point after 16 years as a design engineer was I had an opportunity to be a chief engineer at another electronics company on Long Island, or to be a sales engineer slash application engineer for Burr Brown Corporation, which was an analog semiconductor company.
Yes.
So one thing led to another, discussed it with my wife, thought about it quite a bit. And I said, you know what, I kind of like teaching and, I've always enjoyed teaching people stuff and things like that. So I said, I kind of like teaching. And, the fork I took was Burr Brown because I'd be out in the field visiting customers, helping them to design their circuits with Burr Brown products, analog products. So that got me into that, and it was that was my first fork in the road, taking that. And later on, Burr Brown was bought by Texas Instruments. So I was 8 years at Burr Brown, then another 8 years at Texas Instruments after they bought Burr Brown. So that was kind of another fork in the road because, should I stay with TI or should I do something else? I stayed with TI, which is a good thing. I had so many great mentors that helped me out. And being a sales engineer slash apps engineer, I interfaced with people. So what got me to, let me just back up a little bit. Before I took the Burr Brown job, I'm like, I'm a geeky engineer. What do I know about talking to people, and teaching people things, showing them how to do stuff. So I talked to some friends and stuff, and they said, hey, Steve, there's the Dale Carnegie course locally, and you should take that. If you want to be a people person, how to win friends and influence people,
Wow.
You should take that course. So I did take it before I went to Burr Brown. And it really, really opened my eyes. Dale Carnegie had a great book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's still out there, that book. That's the original, but there's a new one, How to Win Friends and Influence People in the Digital Age. And
really?
Yeah, and that's fairly recently. But anyway, that helped me a lot, doing that, because I learned to, what stuck with me was the instructors saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak.
Okay.
Find out what the person wants, help them to get that. So it's not, it's not the kind of thing where you're using people, you're helping to get what they want.
Right.
And that's important, and it's all about communications, right? And communications it's the verbal word, and it's also the written word. Those are the two main types, I think. and I've used both. I learned a lot more of the writing aspect later on after Burr Brown and Texas Instruments. Because what I did is I got into, after Texas Instruments, again, a fork in the road. Do I go to another company, start my own business, or should I take the chance and go into have an opportunity to write for a company called EDN? It was for a magazine called EDN that I had been reading since I was at the university.
Yeah, and I still have some copies.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so I said, wow. I said, you know what? That's a way to teach. That's a possibility to teach, because I also had an opportunity at that time to teach as an adjunct professor at a local Long Island University engineering school. But I said, you know what? I'm confined to a syllabus there at the university, but to write for EDN, wow, that's a dream job for me, you know. And I wasn't a great writer, but I became a better writer with a lot of good mentors, and they helped me out tremendously. So
that's good. I want to, before we go any further, I want to touch on two things that so far you've mentioned several times about forks in the road, and I think that particularly for younger engineers, they're going to want to know, you know, which one should I take? How do you go about deciding which path to take?
The first thing I do, my wife is one of the really excellent people in my life. I love her. 42 years we're married, and she's my partner. She's the one who, she took all the pictures in the book I wrote, and she also helped me with the interview. She's really, really good. And so I talk it over with her first, and then I talk to some people, and that might be down one fork, and some people that might be down the other fork, part of the fork. So that's an important part of it. And just you need to get the information from people, and know which fork to take, because it's always a difficult thing, but you need to do some research, talk to people who are doing one part of the fork, and talk to other people who are doing the other. But it's mostly like I said, I'd speak to my wife, get her view, and she's got a really good view of the world. So
I think it's interesting that everything you're mentioning leads me to believe that you don't make decisions in a vacuum, especially not big decisions like that.
Right.
I think a lot of people kind of make that mistake, is that they know what they want, quote unquote, and that they're going to go for it. But I just think it's very interesting that you talk to people. You talk to your wife, you talk to these other people.
Yep. And mentors. If you have some mentors, that's important. Mentors are. I've had so many really good mentors in my life and my career, and those people helped guide me as well. So you gotta find some people that you feel are really knowledgeable, experienced people to be mentors, and they can come from almost anywhere. But it's somebody you trust, you rely on, and you go to them. They're the go-to people for you, And so mentors are very, very important especially in a young engineer's life. But for me, all through my career, really, and still today,
That's another great point. I was going to ask about the importance of mentors, but what if you're a young engineer, you're green, so to speak, you just got out of university, and I don't know anybody, this is my first job, how do you find a mentor?
You really almost don't purposely look for them. I never did. I never searched for them. My first job, I'd find somebody, and I'd get close to a person who was knowledgeable, about what I'd be doing, somebody who could help me in that way, whether it was, the electrical panel box in a hospital that was being built, or an audio product for another job, or the microwave, or then ultimately for analog products at Burr Brown and TI. So, you know, you look for people who really you find that are, wow, this person knows this stuff. It could be a guy or a gal, you know, both, you know, I've encountered so many times in my life, and you go to them for advice, you know, and that's you have to do that. That's so important, you know, when you find somebody that you could follow and trust, and it'll probably be multiple people.
Wow, that's a good tip. Okay, so this takes us up to how you got into writing. Now, I want to talk about your book now, because I'm sure you got a lot of really cool stories about that. Now, this book, this was not part of your job, is that right? This is something this is a not a pet project, but a labor of love, so to speak.
It was very much a labor of love for me, but what happened is I started on this journey. It was about a 1,600-mile drive from Arizona through New Mexico, all through the hills of Texas into Houston, where NASA was, right? And then back the same way, you know, up in the hills and all these places, right? 1,600 miles, roughly.
How long did that take you?
It was 10 days.
So you did all the interviews in 10 days?
Yeah. Almost all the interviews. I'll tell you, that was all the NASA people.
Okay.
So what happened is I started out, this all started out with, I'm working at EDN, I'm an editor, and writing tech articles. So it all started out with interviewing people that worked on the space program. Both Grumman Corporation is where it started, Long Island, because you know, I knew the people at Grumman and at the Grumman Retirees Group. So I said, let me interview them and I can get some good articles, you know, out of the stuff that they did, you know. So I went to what's called the Cradle of Aviation on Long Island. It's an amazing museum. And the docents that worked there were ex-Grumman engineers.
Okay.
And there were like all kinds of stuff that Grumman did, from older aircraft, from the different wars, to newer aircraft, and then to the Apollo program that they had there. So you know, I said, let me I talked to the people at the museum, and they said, yeah, we could set up a conference room here and you could interview them. So I'm ready to write my stories then, you know. So we went into a conference room. There were about 6 or 7 engineers from Grumman of all different, you know, expertise in different areas that worked on the lunar module. So interview them, and it was great. It was really amazing stories, incredible stories that are all in the book. And I said, so have you guys written a book on this, or any of you written a book? And one guy says, no, we haven't written a book or anything, but we want you to write the book. I said, I said, no, I never wrote a book. I said, I'm a writer and an engineer. I said, but yeah, I never wrote a book. They said, well, you have to write the book, because what we just told you is going to be gone. I mean, you could do articles on it, but and they're up on the internet, but what we're telling you is going to be gone ultimately, and we want to keep that out there for younger engineers, you know, how, you know, what we did and how we did it. And so I went away, you know, just, you know, in my mind that, no, well, I'm going to do the articles. But then I thought about it and I said, well, I never wrote a book, but, you know, I said, talk to Loretta, my wife. And so we said, she said, why don't you, you know, you're going to write some more articles anyway. So write some articles from some of the things these guys showed you. Hold off on the Apollo stuff. And why don't you go to NASA? You know a lot of people at NASA. So I contact the people I know in White Sands Rocket Test Range in New Mexico, Las Cruces, New Mexico. And then I contacted people in Houston who led me to the NASA Retirees Club, the Alumni
There's a
Association.
club. I didn't know.
Oh, they got a club. It's great. I gotta tell you a story about it. But anyway, so there are a bunch of guys up in the hills of Texas before you get to, it's before you get to Houston, but it's quite a bit of distance driving up in the hills there. It's like Texas never ends. It's like goes on and on and on.
Yeah. I'm a Texan, so yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm going to interview these people. Maybe this would be good for the book. So during the day, I would go to different areas of NASA, the White Sands rocket test range, and Loretta took pictures. I'd interview some of the people there who were actively working, not retirees, for the Apollo program. And the evenings, I'd see the retirees. And the same thing when I went into the hills of Texas. There were all retirees. We did all that stuff at nighttime and on weekends, because I was traveling, with for EDN to do my articles, and I did. During the day, I did that. The evenings and weekends, I did worked on people that would be right for the book, the retirees. The same when I went into Houston. They got us behind the scenes in Houston, and the PR people took us around tours and all that stuff, and we met people doing all kinds of stuff on different programs that were running, and then in the evenings and the weekends, same thing, was finding the people who were part of the retirees group for the book. So
the book is just something you did on your own.
Yeah, it is. It's something that kind of was a personal thing, and from my experiences as a kid, it was the space program meant so much to me. I wanted to work for NASA. Never got the opportunity to work for them, but funny thing is, my wife and I, when the space shuttle program was running, we both applied as mission specialists to it.
Nice.
There were forms you fill out. She was an electronics assembler, micro assembler. They needed people like that, and they needed electrical engineers. So I'm like, well, let's apply. Would you go? She goes, yeah, I'd go. I said, yeah, I'd go too. I'd go up there. So a few months go by after we apply, we get a letter from NASA. We're like, wow. Open up the letter. It's a really neat rejection letter that I have framed. Both of us had a rejection letter that we had framed, because tons of people applied, and they just, whatever the process was, they didn't pick us. So, but I framed it. We have it, So, but anyway, it's it was kind of a dream of mine, and and writing this book is, it brought me back to the times when, in the 60s, when I watched the TV every time there was a launch from Mercury onto Apollo. And my mother caught on after a while that, Mom, I don't feel too good this morning. I think I better stay home. Oh, is there another rocket launch today? Yeah, there is, but I still don't feel good. Yeah, okay. So I'd watch Walter Cronkite on TV, that was the only thing on TV in those days. When there was a rocket launch, it was on TV all day. And I'd be like soaking that stuff up. So that was the fun of it for me, and writing this book was kind of a culmination of what I experienced, and hearing the stories from these guys. It's just incredible. I mean, it was amazing what they did, the dedication, the long hours, being away from their families, taking pay that wasn't quite as good as if you went into a different market other than the space program, as a private company. You'd probably make more, but they wanted to be part of this. President Kennedy spurred everybody on, so, and that's what really got things going for these people, these guys that we interviewed.
That's cool. I've seen a lot of the series. I don't know if you remember, there was a series called From the Earth to the Moon.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a few years ago. Right now, I'm following the National Geographic one called The Right Stuff.
Yeah. Same here.
But you got to interview these people. So let's talk a little bit about that. Obviously, I want people to pick up your book because I'm sure it's got a lot of really neat stories. But first, yes, I want you to tell me, you said you had a funny story about the NASA Club. Tell me about that one, then maybe you can tell me another story.
So we're in Houston, and one of the guys that I interviewed said, "Hey, Steve, we're having a guy come in to talk, to do a presentation at the Grumman, the NASA Retirees Club, and most of them are ex-Apollo people." So, excuse me. So, why don't you come? It was a Saturday, So, so why don't you come? And it was a STEM. Somebody speaking about STEM, the STEM program. Yeah. So they were in there. There were all these retirees there and stuff. So they did the presentation, and then I met some astronauts. I met a lot of people who worked on the Apollo program. And they said, "Steve, it's getting towards 5 o'clock, so why don't you come and join us? We're having we do this after every presentation. We have beer and dip." So I said, and we do it all the time. Okay. It's homemade dip, good beer, So I said, "No, I can't refuse that, So and we went across the street from where the presentation facility was, which is on NASA property. We're outside of NASA property now, and there's this big tent that they have, the retirees, and there's all these great retirees there that were talking to me once they found out I was doing the book. One of the fellows I interviewed was the guy who did Night Before Christmas. There was a poem that he wrote, him and some of the other NASA people. He's in my book, this fella. But it's the night before Christmas. But it was done with the names of astronauts and people at Mission Control.
Nice.
Really great creation. So this guy tells me the story and everything about it, and I said, I remember that. I remember that because Mission Control was communicating with the spacecraft, and it was Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And so they did the Night Before Christmas, and it was really, really neat. I remember listening to it, and now I got the opportunity to meet one of the key guys who put this together, and he's got the names of Mission Control people, of astronauts, all that stuff. So, and
that's cool.
Actually, I think it happened to be the guys who were up there. I think it might have been the last mission, Apollo 17, I think. Jack Schmidt, who I've met, is one of the astronauts who were on the last mission to the moon, Apollo 17. Wow. And Jack was a geologist by trade. So he was the second last man to walk off the moon. The commander was the last guy, but he was the second last man to walk off. And he's got some great stories that he told me, which I won't go into now because I don't want to, get away from the aspect of speaking to the guys and gals out there about communications. So sure. One of the things about communications I just want to say is whether you're writing a book or you're speaking. Okay, let me just quickly say something about when you're speaking. Sure. Know your audience. Make sure you know your audience. And let me just, excuse me 1 minute, okay? I'm going to demonstrate something to you, okay?
Oh, that's awesome.
So my wife said to me, "Don't do that." So I said, well, I think I got a lot of people's attention. They're probably laughing and stuff. Don't do this to an audience of PhDs or something
Yes.
like that. You got to know your audience, you know. But their audience where you want to, when you start off a talk or a presentation, you got to get their attention. You got to make it light. You got to loosen them up a little bit. Tell a joke, maybe. Become Chewbacca. You know, whatever it is.
Nice.
You've got to get their attention. Okay.
Okay.
And then you have to thoroughly prepare the content. You know, that's what you do. Whether you're writing a book or whether you're doing a presentation, it's the verbal or the written word for communication. So, the book. Can I talk a little bit about the book?
Absolutely, yes.
What I want to do is when I finally decided to write the book, I'm still at EDN, and I talked to my editor, the managing editor of EDN, Rich Quinnell, and I told him about I'm going to be writing a book, and he said, Steve, what you do first, get this book, and it's called the Soul of a New Machine.
Okay.
And he says, just read it. It's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And read it. Go over it. He goes, I've read it, he said, and it's really well written. So it might help you, since you've never written a book, it's going to help you, you know, to format the way the book flows. Okay. And I did use some of the techniques from this book, which is an excellent, excellent book. Now, with my book, what I did, Guardians of the Right Stuff, and it's kind of different. People are saying, well, there's the image. This is a great image that inspired me before I even thought of the book. I was at a Space Tech Expo and I met Aldo Spadoni, who makes these images. Okay. And my wife bought me a framed copy of this image. Nice. And it really, really, you know, I mean, like I've always loved the space program. But what happens, people have said to me, where's the title and where's your name on the front? I'm like, I don't want to take away from this image at all, because when it's on the shelf, you're going to see the spine. It says Guardians of the Right Stuff, Steve Taranovich. Fine. If it's lying on a table or standing up on a bookshelf or something, or somebody sees it, I want them to be curious about, well, what is this? What's this book about? You know, pick it up, hold it in your hand, you know, and that's the reason I did that. But this image meant a lot to me, and I have it right up above my computer on the wall, and I love that image. You know, it's the world's beckon, you know, you know, I wrote a little bit about it from Aldo. Aldo, he wrote an explanation of what it's about, what the image was about on the front cover, the world's beckon. And I think that's the way it is today, even with the Artemis program running, you know, making a space station orbit the moon, going down to the moon, and, you know, taking the minerals and building stuff on the moon from minerals on the moon, not bringing a lot of heavy stuff up to a space station orbiting the moon, which will be a launching point for the Orion spacecraft to go to Mars in the 2030s. So that's the idea. Because, you know, when a rocket blasts off and it's heavy, it's taking a ton of fuel, right?
Yeah.
So if you put a lot of stuff on it, like, you know, you want to put things on the moon like solar panels and all kinds of stuff, right? So you don't want to bring that stuff up. It's heavy, costs a lot of fuel. You got to get out of the Earth's atmosphere. It's going to cost you a lot of rocket fuel.
Right.
So what you do, you send up just a rocket to the space station once they build it around the moon, and it stays up there. And you want to do solar panels. You go down to the moon from the space station. You send crews down there. There are minerals on the moon that actually can put together could be made to put together a solar panel.
Wow.
And they're finding water and stuff, and water and where there's hydrogen there, and there's they'll be able to create oxygen with different devices. So you'll have you can actually make rocket fuel from the materials that are on the moon.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat stuff, and
It is.
And energy systems, Jack Schmidt, one of the astronauts that I said, the second last guy off the moon, there's an element called helium-3 on the moon, and that's it's under some of the layers of soil on the moon, and it's from meteors that have crashed into the moon. They don't burn up meteors when they come into the moon's atmosphere, because there is no atmosphere. It's just a void of space. On Earth, meteors burn up usually, pretty much. So there's lots of helium-3 on meteors out there. They smack into the moon's surface. There's tons of helium-3. Jack Schmidt said, if you loaded the space shuttle bay, when we had the space shuttle, with helium-3, brought it back to Earth, put it in a fusion reactor, which we don't have yet, but we could, that's being worked on. We use fission reactors nowadays, but fusion reactor, you put it in a fusion reactor, it would power the entire United States for a year. And there are no byproducts that are radioactive at all. Wow. So, and that's the interesting thing that's coming there for that stuff, and that's going to be the future for us. It's going to be a lot of things going on the moon to get us to Mars ultimately. So,
wow. Well, I can hope that maybe I'll see some of that. Who knows?
Yeah, no, it'll be the 2030s, and there's an astronaut that I know, Victor Glover, going up on Saturday on a Boeing spacecraft. It's going to be this Saturday, launching from Cape Kennedy, and they're going up. Victor is an XF-18 pilot, young man I met out in the Yuma Desert in Arizona.
Yes.
There was an Orion space capsule being tested. It was being dropped from I don't know if it was a C-5 or a C-17, big cargo aircraft. And they tested the parachutes with some of the lines of the parachute cut. So in case they broke, they said, let's see if it'll land safely in the desert, hitting the desert floor without damaging the equipment or hurting the astronauts. So they got all these sensors. And so Victor's out there. That's where I met Victor. And he's, we're watching this thing come down, and it hits it landed. I don't know how the heck they did this, but they're looking at the wind and all that stuff, and the plane dropped it where the right time they're supposed to drop it, and it landed real close to where they said it was going to land, and it turned out that the shock, they hit the desert at 10 miles per hour, which is like, you're going to hit the water 10 miles an hour. It's like hitting concrete anyway. So, but out in the desert, they can easily recover it, bring the chutes back to Houston, and, test them all out, So anyway, so I met Victor, and he's piloting the spacecraft Saturday. He's going to go up there, and young guy, I talked to him when we were out in the desert there, and I said, so Victor, you excited about going to Mars? He says, yeah, I'm not going to Mars. He goes, the astronauts going to Mars are in grammar school right now.
Yeah. I believe that.
So, but anyway, getting back to, communications and stuff like that, you got to write about or speak about what you love, something you have a passion about, something you're passionate about. And that's the book. And that, there's a passion. I'm not going to make a lot of money on the book, but it was done to get the word out there of what these guys did. And it's just incredible. I mean, the sacrifices they made, and in less than 10 years, they put men on the moon.
Yeah, yeah.
It's incredible with the technologies they had.
Yes, with slide rules.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to do something you have a passion about. Either, if you want to do the communications properly, you got to be passionate about it. Love what you're doing, and really, work at it to improve, what you can do. I've never written a book, but I wrote a book. I had, when I was in, like I said, my first 16 years, I'm in my little corner designing circuits. I'm just like most engineers out there. I'm just in my corner by myself doing my thing. I'm not presenting. I'm not doing anything, right? Like talking to people much. But one thing led to another. The communications part of it that I kind of felt was important after my first 16 years as a design engineer, helped me to talk to people and to write. And as editor at EDN for 8 years, for analog and power management and sensors, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed that, and I happen to be a geek about spelling and punctuation and grammar. But if you're not, don't be afraid to write, because there are people out there who can help you with that.
That's very good.
So
you don't have to know everything about everything.
That's right.
That's really good. A geek about grammar. I'm going to write that.
Yeah. I mean, there's, like I said, there's mentors out there. There's, if you want interested in doing speaking, there's Toastmasters. There's, like I said, the Dale Carnegie course. There are books. Those are things that help me. Those kind of things. So, and I think you can make the transition, guys and gals out there. If you're a geeky engineer like me, if I did it, you guys can do it. You guys and gals.
Very good, very good. Do you ever stop and think what you would be doing had you not taken these routes? Had you not taken these forks? Do you ever think?
If I had not taken the paths that I did and chosen the other fork, I'd be a chief engineer at a company and burned out. I would have burned out, really. With writing, when you write, especially in writing, I mean, even in verbal communications, but when you write, you're writing an article, or you're writing a book, you need the opportunity to get up and get away from it. Take a walk, do some exercise. You got to get away, because you can't stay, focused like you need to be while you're writing and doing your research. Tons of research on doing stuff like this, about writing and verbal presentations. Lots and lots of research. But when you're doing that, you got to take those breaks, because your mind will just kind of freeze up, turn to jello, and you got to take that break and then come back. You walk away for a while and then you come back to it, but you need those breaks. It's important. But anybody can do it. If I did it, geeky engineer in my little cubicle in the corner, anybody can do it. So don't be afraid.
That's great advice. That's really good. Are there any other stories? Maybe one more story. I don't want to drain your book dry, but
I'll tell you one that stands out to me is, first of all, the hospitality in Texas, and really everyone we interviewed was so hospitable. They invited us into their homes, especially the NASA people, because the growing people I interviewed in New York, we were in the museum conference room, but they were very wonderful too. But the Texas people, many of them in the hills of Texas, invited us into their homes, including astronaut Jack Lausma, who he was a Marine colonel, fighter pilot, and he's retired, of course, and but he was in the astronaut team, the Right Stuff guys, right? He didn't get a chance to go to the moon. What he did was test a lot of the ground equipment and stuff. And he'd go and make sure that the lunar module, the command module, was functionally right for an astronaut, for somebody who's going to be flying it. So, and a lot of changes needed to be made because people just, designers design stuff for functionality in their mind, but an astronaut's mind is like, hey, I don't need this here. It's not going to do anything for me, but can you do this? And that's what Jack did. Jack did that. So he was one key guy. One of the guys that most stands out in my mind though is Henry Pohl. He's a rocket design engineer. He's out in Texas on a huge ranch. And so I talked to Henry. I said, Henry, I'm coming to Texas. I'm going to come up in the hills to visit you. And he wasn't actually in the hills. He was down at the base of the hills. Most of the guys were in the hills, but he wasn't. He was on this huge ranch. He goes, yeah, great, Steve. Come here and let me know what day and stuff. So he says, don't GPS my address. I said, oh, yeah, why? How come? He says, the GPS doesn't work out here.
Yeah.
You'll never find it.
Yeah.
So he gives me turn-by-turn instructions, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're driving along, Loretta and I were on I-10, and then we start going up into the hills, into the not the hills, into the county roads and stuff. It's all flat area there. And his county road, whatever it is, we turn on it. Another one, we turn on this county road. Where does this end? It's like, and finally, it's like you go past the red schoolhouse, and then there's the old shack on the left, and
the gas station.
Yeah. So there's all these like different signs, and then we're driving along, and we're off the county roads now. We're going on to onto a dirt road. It goes into a rocky road, pebbles and
a gravel road.
Gravel. And then we come to grass, and there's a fence with an opening. And I look this way, the fence goes on forever to the horizon. Awesome. That way, the fence goes on forever to the horizon. So, and the instructions said, at this point, go past the cattle guard.
The cattle guard. Sure.
So I'm like, Loretta, what's a cattle guard? I said, I'm from Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn. I said, what's a cattle guard? In my mind, I'm like, it's a cowboy sitting on the fence with a cowboy hat and a shotgun, and he's guarding the cattle, So
that's beautiful.
And I don't see him. He's not there. So
there's nobody here.
But it says, go through the opening. Let's see. We go through the opening, drive and drive and drive forever. And I said, I hope we're on the right road. And it's not a road, really, right? So we come to a cabin, a really nice. It's actually a ranch, and there's Henry standing on the porch, in his bare feet, jeans and a white T-shirt, and he's waving at us. Yeah, Loretta, Steve, over here, So
as if there's another guy who's standing around trying to get you.
Yeah, I know, really, right? So, and it's
just in case you haven't noticed, I'm the guy.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see anything else. There's nothing else out there, and this tree line and the great distance, But anyway, so Henry invites us in, and the hospitality was incredible. What a wonderful, wonderful man. And they were all like that. There was Texas hospitality. I think it's not just Texas, but I was impressed by the Texas hospitality. People in the hills, Henry, they all have these, like Henry had these shrines in his home to rocket engines. He brings out a rocket engine. It's one of the quad rocket engines that adjust the attitude of the spacecraft. Wow. They're quad engines that kind of pulse and can turn it or angle the spacecraft, not the main rocket engine, the big rocket
Nice.
engine. These are smaller. And he used to design those. He studied under Werner von Braun, this guy.
Oh.
And wonderful, wonderful man. So gives us the story, and I'm like blown away by the stories. It's like, this is like amazing. And Loretta is walking through, taking pictures of all the stuff in his multiple rooms that are shrines to Apollo. You know, she took all those pictures. And so as we're leaving, Henry says, Steve, when you come back, whenever you stop back after you write the book, I said, well, yeah, now I know where you are anyway. So, so when you come back,
way back.
When we come back, I got a shotgun for you. We're gonna go hunt those pigs in the woods because they kill my cattle. It was like wild boar, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, he goes, I'm gonna give you a shotgun. We get on a quad and we're gonna go out there and hunt them. Yeah, I'll do it. So we're going back. Once this coronavirus is gone, we're going to go back there. We're going to go see the people again that we interviewed. And I'm going to go hunting with Henry.
Nice. Nice.
So it was fun
that
stuff.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Just to be there. I'm not much of a hunter, but just to be there, I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Well, that's, hopefully this all this social distancing will be over quick and you can go back and meet these people.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. You know, I've already mailed them copies of the book and each one of these, guys, and, written an inscription personally to each one of them. Loretta and I signed it. And, they're just wonderful people. And they were so happy to hear, because it was 2 years until the book got published. And was October 18th. It went up on Amazon.
Wow.
And so it's been 2 years. And these guys said, "Oh, I thought you gave up on us." I said, No. I said, "Man, it's a goal. It's a goal." And I did it finally. So, but I'm happy to do it for them. It's all about them. People need to hear and understand what they did and how we landed people on the moon in less than 10 years, safely. After the book takes place after the Apollo 1 fire. The Apollo 1 fire, 3 astronauts unfortunately died, but after that, that's where my book starts. And there's some great stories about how to prevent what happened there on the Apollo 1 fire, which was just a ground test, and we go on to show how the Guardians protected the right stuff, guys. So.
Nice. Well, Steve, I commend you for this work that you're doing, because clearly you're doing it. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because there's a story that deserves to be told. And I think that those are the best ones.
It's a chance of a lifetime opportunity to do something like this and, get the word out there that what these guys did,
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to encourage everybody to go out and pick up a copy of this book. I'll probably be doing that next week myself. But thank you once again for sharing all of this. Thank you for sharing the stories. Thank you for all your wisdom and your insight. And, hopefully when all this coronavirus stuff dies down, maybe you and I can meet somewhere. I'm in Texas too. If you can drive out to the middle of a dirt road, then I can meet you somewhere in between. You won't have to, I won't make you drive past the cattle guard.
At least I know what it is now. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to stop recording there. Okay.